I mean, lots of dudes are walking around like basically just male versions of menopausal chicks in their early 20s. It's very, very sad. And they're wondering what's wrong with them. And they're thinking, oh, it's because I'm not disciplined enough. I'm not training hard enough. I'm all these kind of things. And sometimes that's the case. But sometimes their biology's fucked, but their doctor's not going to run the blood test for them to work that out.
Also really curious about this. It's about other people that like worked in 9 to 5s and stuff, and just lots of guys. It looks like they have low testosterone, and I guess they have. What would be the reason that most guys in this day of age have like lower testosterone than they would have years ago, like decades, centuries?
That's the $1 million question, bro. That's the biggest thing. And that's what I'm writing my book on, is that like, that's the big elephant in the room. Because when we look at, the literature for low testosterone, like hypogonadism, meaning, failure of, in a man's case, the testicles, you're looking at primary and secondary. So like, if I took a dude and bludgeoned him with a baseball bat in the nuts, he's going to have primary hypogonadism. That makes sense why he's got low testosterone. His testicles are fucked. Same with like, testicular cancer, you have to get a testicle removed. That'll do it. Testicular injury, torsions, all this kind of stuff. And then you've got the other side, which is the secondary, which is when LH and FSH are suppressed. So the signal from the pituitary to the testicles to say, hey, make testosterone, is completely suppressed. And this is basically the body in a stressed situation saying, we don't need to prioritize reproduction. We don't need to prioritize thriving. We need to prioritize surviving. And this is what happens when you go into a big deficit. This is what happens when someone goes through chronic stress. I've seen it happen with autoimmune conditions. I've seen it happen with bad divorces. All that kind of stuff can definitely cause it. And sometimes the trauma can be severe enough that it doesn't come back, and sometimes it does. So that's a case by case. But there's a third type, which is what I'm writing about, which it doesn't have a name. I'm calling it generational hypogonadism. So if that catches on, that was me. And what we're looking at here is that we've got, guys who are like 18 to 30, right? But particularly like the early 20s guys, like 21, 22, 23, when you should be fucking thriving. And these guys are not only doing everything right, but I mean, like, they're doing everything right to the nth degree. Like, these are like the ultimate fucking biohackers, doing every possible thing right times a million. Their LH and FSH are mid-range. So their body is going, we're making the correct amount of testosterone, but their testosterone is like bottom quartile of the range. And it's going, okay, well, why, if they're doing everything right? And this is what a lot of people on YouTube don't really seem to understand in terms of when they're looking at this space, because they're not working with these guys, because there's this misconception that, if you're a young dude and you do everything right, you eat well, you train well, then you'll have optimal testosterone levels. I call bullshit, because there are some people, yeah, but what about all these other guys who are doing everything right? The levels suck. So the question is why? Answer is we don't know, but I think it's a multifactorial thing. Now, how much of this is deliberate and how much of this is a byproduct of ignorance, that comes down to where you sit in the spectrum of your belief in the world, but I don't really care for people listening. So this is what the reality is that you've got, so firstly, you've got the pesticides. So you've got like atrazine and glyphosate, which are endocrine disrupting. You've also got all the plastics, which are endocrine disrupting. You've got polyunsaturated fats, like vegetable oils, which are to a degree estrogenic in and of themselves. And then you've also got the lack of the fat-soluble vitamins from animal foods, which have been replaced with vegetable oils, Crisco, that whole fucking shit show. But then you've also got the multi-generational effect of all this stuff happening post-industrial revolution, because this just didn't happen in our lifetimes. It's our parents and their parents and their parents' parents. So I think what we've got is now we've got this state where, we're moving more towards, to put it very blatantly, a pseudo-hermaphrodite state where what the research shows, I'll have to show you the study, is that now like as we know, the female vulva is lower on the pelvis than the male scrotum, so it's closer to the anus. And what we're seeing is that the gap between the scrotum and the anus in younger boys is now getting smaller, so the genitals are even moving further south. So I think what's happening is that men are actually physically becoming more and more feminized as prolonged exposure to all these factors take place. And then society is now conditioning men to say masculinity is bad, being more feminine is good. So you're getting these guys with super low testosterone levels, but they're also going through their development with low testosterone. So they're not getting those masculine cues, they're not getting those hormonal signals to their brain. And then they're getting to the age of 20, 21, 22, mood disorders, sexual identity issues, all these problems, and society telling them that being a man is bad. So they're going, maybe I'm meant to be a woman. And then that's a whole other fucking story. But
Yeah.
I think that the one of the big issues with younger men in terms of their mood, but also their metabolic health, their issues with, not making any progress at the gym, and this vicious cycle of basically discouraging men of getting up and fucking getting after it, is this low testosterone environment. And it's breeding men into being submissive, fucking passive, male feminists who don't leave any kind of mark in the world, and end up absolutely fucking miserable.
Yeah.
That's where I'm seeing.
Interesting.
It's scary shit, dude. It's really fucking scary. And like, I just got back I was in Lithuania for 9 months. I just got back to Australia. And like in the 9 months I was gone, it's like the testosterone levels dropped by another 10% on the street. Like it's a stark fucking difference. But like over there, like, so they have like lunches at school, like the school provides the lunch, like in America. Like in Australia, you tend to bring your own food. It's just a culture. But like you can't serve a kid anything over there that's not ecological. Like everything is ecological that you serve to a child. It's so easy to get access to like proper good quality food. And then to get pesticides over there is virtually impossible. Like the pesticide content is so much lower. So whereas in Western countries, the food supply, like the mainstream food supply, is so fucking compromised with these pesticides and these inorganic ways of raising livestock, that children are basically getting a hypogonadism sentence from the moment they're brought into the world. Like unless you're like living off the grid in nature with your own livestock and your own organic produce, and you're keeping them away from plastics and pollution. If I had a son, like he'd be getting his testosterone levels checked all throughout development and into his early 20s, and I'd be putting him on TRT the day he turned 18 if his T levels are low. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a lot of people have this, I don't know, this dogma that you're putting testosterone in your body, you're a cheater. I don't know, it's unhealthy, but they do not realize when you have low testosterone, you feel like shit. I can tell you what, if I would have to live like that for the rest of my life, I couldn't do it, man.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
I was just trying to pull up a photo of my phone to show you what I looked like before I started TRT, so that people watching could see. But it's,
I can put it on the screen if you send it to me at this.
Oh, cool! I'll send it to you. Yeah. So like, if people are watching this now, like I was in a band. This was like a modeling photo shoot I did, but I mean, I did well in terms of like, I mean, I looked the way I wanted to look at that time. Like I was like, people will see the photo, but for those listening, like it was, skinny, long hair, eyeliner, that kind of like, rock and roll kind of thing. And like, that's how I wanted to look, but I couldn't pull off anything else. Like I felt very shit. I felt very fearful all the time. Like I always had this low grade, social anxiety, which I call learned fear, all the time. And I mean, I was, touring with my band all over the country, and I still, like, I didn't feel good and strong and present as a man. I felt afraid. I felt timid. I felt effeminate, but I hadn't known any fucking different. So, I had some amazing experiences when I was younger for sure, but I wish I could go back and do it all again with proper testosterone levels.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's also often the pretty boys that are like lower testosterone. And I see this a lot. Like the girls like the guys who are like, to me, the young girls, and I don't know how it is when you get older, maybe that changes, but like they are all into the pretty guys, the pretty boys. But not really the guy with the masculine features. I think it differs from girl to girl, but This is often what I see
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, and I think this is probably getting a bit left field, but I think the reason why those girls like the prettier guys is because the prettier guys are easier to control and to get away with shit. And I think at the end of the day, what a lot of those girls do want is a masculine man who can lead them and be strong. But society has shifted them away from that. But it also like those men are going to hold them accountable for their behavior. So what I do see when I coach the younger guys is what I see is those girls go for the prettier boys, but they end up cheating on the prettier boys with the dudes who are big, scary, and jacked because there is
Yeah.
that primal urge to have the alpha seed. And like Rollo Tomasi talks about that really well. But this whole notion of like, and I mean, I fell into it when I was younger because it was like, this is how you get conditioned when you have low hormone levels. It just happens. And like, I mean, I take responsibility for who I was when I was younger. I mean, it's just who I was. It was just a very different man than I am now. But yeah, I mean, a lot of guys are starting to value, or they're starting to compete for women in a more feminine way. They're not basically going like a hierarchy of masculinity in terms of like an alpha presence. They're kind of more going towards a, we're your friend, we like the same shows as you, like let's talk and have a gossip kind of thing, because that's the only way they can get these chicks to pay attention with them is if they feminize themselves to be able to become their peers. And the problem is that it doesn't work long term because she'll end up leaving that dude for the dude that's 6'4" and 140 kilos who can bench you for reps. Like it's just what ends up playing out for these guys that they have to learn. And like I see it a lot now because I'm a bit older and I can see it from the outside looking in. But when I was younger, I had no idea what was going on. But it is definitely coming through where like I see younger guys coming through. Like I don't like one of the best exercises people can do, bro, is like compare like the graduating high school class of like 1990 with 2000, 2010, and then 2020. And so because they're all the same age, right? But a decade apart, it is a fucking de-evolution of the man. Like they look like they go from being like 18, 19 to like 12 years old. It's very, very disturbing. And the thing is, like the chicks are coming through. Like when I talk to younger guys, they're like, girls have no interest in us. And I'm like, well, why would they? You're like a 21-year-old man child. So it makes sense, man. And I think both sides of the gender equations are suffering just as much, like with all this war on fertility and hormonal health and poor nutrition. I mean, I don't know about you, but I know so many women with reproductive problems, endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, problems with their periods, problems with fertility. I mean, it's hitting them just as hard as it's hitting us.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, we all want to be like the most masculine man we can be, but your hormones need to be in check as well, of course. I do not.
Yeah,
I do not think you can really be masculine with low testosterone.
I completely agree. I think it's impossible. I think you can walk the walk and you can fake it with game, which is why I think like game is so popular in like certain pickup spaces. But chicks can smell it, dudes can smell it too. There's a pheromonal thing. Like there's a presence that you have when you have optimal testosterone levels. Like they joke that like chicks can smell Tren. Like that's true. Like 100%, because whether they can smell it or whether it's just a body language thing, I don't know. But there is a thing. Like I know that like when I've been bigger and been on like I'm conscious of what I say, being on a legally prescribed anabolic cycle of, let's say, primobolan from a doctor. When I'm in the gym, like people behave differently around me. Like I'll have people come up to me like, "Are you using that?" I'm like, "No, it's on the other side of the gym." Like there's a presence that you have that people tune into when you do have higher androgen levels. And I think that that's an evolutionary thing that we can sense that. We can sense, we immediately respect people who have higher testosterone levels out of fear and out of subservience. It's just the way humans are in terms of our hierarchy, in terms of what's kept us alive. So I think on the converse, if you've got low testosterone levels and you had that the entire time that you were forming in terms of like your identity, who you are, how your relationship is with women, how your relationship is with your family, your peers, and the world as a whole, I think that can really fuck with your shit. And I think it can make you very, very afraid of the world around you, because you don't have that masculine frame. And then that goes into, well, what does testosterone and DHT actually do in the brain? And they do have neurological effects that, they influence neurotransmitters like norepinephrine and GABA, so that when you do lose these androgens of the brain, you stop being cool, calm, collected, driven, motivated, and assertive. Kind of like the combination of like a good Jaeger bomb, which kind of kind of gets you going, but it chills you out a little bit. Yeah. I mean, testosterone is not like a Jaeger bomb, but having something that stimulates you and relaxes at the same time, like caffeine and alcohol, is like what DHT does with norepinephrine and GABA. And when you pull that out, what's left underneath? Fear, empty shell of a person. I mean, lots of dudes are walking around like basically just male versions of menopausal chicks in their early 20s. It's very, very sad. And they're wondering what's wrong with them. And they're thinking, oh, it's because I'm not disciplined enough. I'm not training hard enough. I'm all these kind of things. And sometimes that's the case. But sometimes their biology is fucked, but their doctor's not going to run the blood test for them to work that out.